We see then that during the 5 most recent periods of the 7 we are examining, the power of invading foreign societies so dominated African society that African values were not consciously discussed, or they were stigmatized as negative. Africans were socialized to identify themselves not as Africans, but as Muslims, Christians, or as belonging to some other subset in the superior universe of European and Arab social values. To the Islamized African, the unconverted African was a barbarian Mshenzi or a savage Chedo. To the Europeanized, Christianized African, the unconverted African was a pagan, a heathen, an uncivilized creature. We are thus left with 2 periods, from 10,000 BC to 3,300 BC, and from 3,300 BC to 300 AD, in which it may be possible, in principle, to see African society producing and practicing autonomous African social values. Let us now examine these 2 ages. The period from 3,300 BC to 300 AD was, broadly speaking, the dynastic age of ancient Egypt, the great African metropole of the time. The driving imperative in the process of social construction in that period was violence, domination by superior force. Power then was a monarchical, hierarchical construct. Its basis was military prowess, the efficient cultivation, deployment, and direction of violence. The great legacies of that time are characterized by hierarchical magnificence at the top, social submission at the bottom of the pyramid. Information here was used not as an instrument of scientific research, but as an efficient tool for political legitimation. The remaining period, from 10,000 BC to 3,300 BC, was the longest. For us, it's also the most interesting. For one thing, it was a period of active social formation and experimentation, during which most of the inventions that later came to be subsumed under the umbrella of ancient Egyptian civilization were developed. The list of achievements includes the invention of writing, mathematics, architecture, medicine, astronomy, calendars, measurement, mnemonics, and archiving, as well as the vocational practice of invention and experimentation, not for self-aggrandizement, but for social improvement. We live now in a time when the production, acquisition, and use of knowledge are driven by very different psychosocial motives. Knowledge today is the substance of individual legitimation within society, not of social improvement. Intellectuals can succeed if they use their knowledge as legitimizing agents of established power, or risk failure if they choose the path of social innovation. Studies of African society are driven by different motives and directed toward different purposes. At Perang, our interest is in the study of African society. Our study is driven by a desire to identify, within the corpus of African society, history, and culture, values and practices likely to lead to social unity, the key factor likely to bring Africa out of our entrapment in a present and a recent past that were imposed on us into a future we aim to shape ourselves. That future will be egalitarian and just, or it will be nothing. In the attempt to move away from the threat of nothingness toward a reasoned, creative, egalitarian future, we propose to examine the different ages of African society for potentially useful intellectual tools concepts, values, practices. In that examination, our criteria will be the values of African originality and social unity. Our next video will focus on a search for positive social values, beginning with an evaluation for purposes of African social cohesion of the dominant values of our present age.